Hungarian Folk Tales. A fox seeks shelter. Once upon a time, there lived a wily fox. The old fox was hungry, and so he took a sack and left his home. He walked and walked until the sky grew dark, and he stood outside the house of a rich farmer. He knocked hard on the door, and when asked who was there, he replied, "I'm a poor traveller in need of shelter for the night. Will you take pity on me?" The rich farmer had a good heart, and so did his wife. They let the fox come in and offered him supper. "Kind sir, are there no thieves around the house? I have a fine fat cockerel in my sack, and I wouldn't like to have it taken in the night." "Worry not, Mr. Fox. Nothing has been stolen in my house. You can sleep in peace." "Oh, poor me, my fine fat cockerel has been stolen." They all searched high and low, but no one could find the cockerel anywhere. The rich farmer was so ashamed that a guest of his had been robbed, and he felt sorry for the old fox as it wailed and moaned. But what could he do? He gave the fox a fine fat cockerel of his own and wished him well. So the fox left with a grateful grin on his whiskered face. He walked and walked until the sky grew dark and knocked hard on the door of a second farm. Good people lived in this house, and he was welcomed once more. As they were about to go to bed, the fox began to scour the room as if searching for thieves. "Kind sir, let me tell you that I have a fine fat goose in my sack, and I wouldn't like it to be stolen in the night." "Worry not, Mr. Fox. Nothing has been stolen in my house. You can sleep in peace." The fox waited for these fine folk to fall asleep, and he opened the sack. And what was in the sack? Why, the cockerel, of course. He took the fat fowl out and ate it all up, feathers and all. "Oh, poor me, my fine fat goose has been stolen." They all searched high and low, but no one could find the goose anywhere. The farmer then gave the old fox a fine fat goose of his own to stop him crying and moaning so. He walked and walked until the sky grew dark, and he stood outside a third house. He knocked again, was let in again, but before they went to bed, he turned to the farmer and said, "I've put my sack here under the bench, kind sir, but I can't rest in my bed because I should tell you, kind sir, that I have got a fine fat piglet in it." "You can sleep in peace, Mr. Fox," the farmer assured him. "No matter what is in your sack, there will be no trouble here." "Oh, poor me, my fine fat piglet has been stolen." They all searched high and low, but no one could find the piglet anywhere. What else could the farmer do but give the fox a fine fat piglet of his own? When the sky grew dark that night, the fox knocked at another door. They let him in, and again he said the same before they went to sleep. kind sir, please look out for thieves this night, for I have a fine fat pig in my sack, and I wouldn't like it to be stolen." The farmer glanced at the sack and saw that it had no fine fat pig inside, and knew from its squeals that it was only a piglet. But the wily fox didn't go to sleep. He ate the piglet up, curly tail and all. As soon as the sun rose, the fox began to moan, "Oh, poor me, my fine fat pig has been stolen." The farmer immediately saw the trick and pretended to feel sorry for the old fox. "Don't be so sad, and don't wake the village with your moaning. I'll give you 2 fat pigs instead of 1. Give me your sack so I can put them into it outside." The master went outside with the sack. He had 2 hungry foxhounds. He put them into the fox's sack, tied it up, gave it to the fox, and wished him well. When the wily old fox opened the sack, he saw no pigs. And what should jump out of the sack but the 2 hungry foxhounds? The fox ran as fast as his red legs could carry him. He forgot about his belly and wanted to save his furry hide. But the hungry foxhounds caught hold of his tail and tore him to shreds. If they hadn't, my story would never end. Hungarian Folk Tales. Only donkeys don't eat the spoon. Once upon a time, beyond the snowy Alps, in the cradle of the Carpathian Mountains, lay the land of Hungary, and there lived a king called Matthias. If the old stories are to be believed, then King Matthias liked to see for himself how his people lived. He dressed in the clothes of a simple beggar and wandered the land, where he spoke to his people as their equal. One day he found himself on a vast plain, where all he could see was the small house of a shepherd. So King Matthias approached the house and greeted the good shepherd. It was the middle of winter, so the shepherd invited the king into his home. The shepherd had no idea that this poor beggar was actually the king of the land. He gave him food for his journey, and the king carved his host's name on his stick before he returned to his royal palace. The shepherd had a trusty black sheepdog. The little dog was so skilled and loyal that it never left the shepherd's feet. King Matthias sent a letter to the shepherd inviting him and his trusty sheepdog to the palace. But the invitation did not explain why he was invited or how to find the king's home. So the shepherd made himself look smart, took his crook in his hand, and set off for the king's royal palace, with his sheepdog by his side. When they reached the city gate, they were met by a guard who said, "Hey, old man, stop here. Where are you going?" "To His Majesty the King." "And with a dog?" "But of course," the shepherd replied. "Here you are. You can see the royal letter that invites us both." The guard read the letter from top to bottom. "Oh, old man, you are sure to be richly rewarded by the king. I shall let you pass if you promise to share the great reward with me." "Well, I don't mind. I promise you that half of the reward will be yours." Then the shepherd reached the castle gate. He tried to enter, but was again stopped by a guard. "Hey, old man, stop here. Where are you going?" "To His Majesty the King." "With a dog?" "Well, I have a letter. Here you are." You were right. You were both invited. But then the guard remembered that there was a banquet inside the palace. The king had called together all the important men in his kingdom. The king obviously wanted to reward the lowly shepherd in front of these rich men, but also planned to play a joke on the old man first. The second guard said, "Old man, you are going to get a great reward. I shall let you pass if you give me half of that reward." "All right, I will give you half of it. So he would give one half to this one, and he had promised to give the other half to the other one, so that would leave him with nothing, wouldn't it? The old shepherd walked into the palace. The king and his courtiers were already seated around the large table. The servants had set places for them all with a bowl, spoon, knife and a fork in front of everyone except the shepherd, who had been given no spoon. The soup was served and everyone helped himself. The first, of course, was His Majesty King Matthias, who raised his spoon and said, "Dear sirs, only donkeys don't eat soup." Everyone took his spoon. The shepherd tried to take his one too, but he had none. "Oh dear, I shall be the donkey now because I cannot eat my soup. I cannot eat soup with either a fork or a knife." But this was not the first time that a poor man had to eat soup without a spoon. The old shepherd simply cut the end off his bread and hollowed it out. The crispy crust made the perfect spoon for eating soup, and he sat and ate every last drop, watched by all the important guests and the king. Your Majesty said that only donkeys don't eat soup. Well, let me add that only donkeys don't eat their spoon. And the old shepherd gobbled up his soup-soaked spoon in one. The banquet eventually ended and the time came for the king to hand out rewards. And you will never believe what the old shepherd asked for. "Your Majesty, I would like 50 strokes of the stick." "Shepherd, I haven't invited you to beat you 50 times with a stick. I wanted to play a practical joke on you, but you played the joke on me. Therefore, you deserve more than 50 strokes. Tell me now what I owe you." "Your Majesty, you owe me nothing more than 50 strokes. That's all I want." Then the king understood that it had been a joke again. "Very well then, but tell me now why." "Why? The reason is very simple. On my way here I was stopped by a guard at the city gate who refused to let me in unless he could share half of my reward. Then a second guard only let me enter the palace if he too could receive half of my reward. So now one will receive 25 strokes of the stick, and so will the second." And so the shepherd's joke was ended. Hungarian Folk Tales. Green Peter. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, there stood a large farm. A family lived on that farm with a husband, a wife, a son, and a daughter. When his wife died, the husband married again, so that there should be someone to bring up the children. But the new wife did not like the children, and she put poison in their food. When the children sat down to eat their supper, a white dove flew down and said, "Children, don't eat the soup because it's poisoned. Run away from home and never look back." The boy and his young sister walked and walked until they heard someone calling, "Green Peter, Green Peter, come here." It was a poor little fish cast ashore by the sea. "Pick me up, Green Peter, throw me back into the water, do good and you will prosper." So the boy happily helped the little fish. They walked and walked until they heard someone calling, "Green Peter, Green Peter, come here." This time it was a little bird that had lost its flock. The bird begged the boy, "Green Peter, please put me on the branch so that I can fly on with my bird brothers." Green Peter put it up on the branch, and the little bird said to him, "Thank you, do good, and you will prosper." They walked and walked until they heard someone calling, "Green Peter, come here." A poor shriveled rosebush was calling. It begged the boy to water its roots. "Well, Green Peter," the rosebush said, "do good and you will prosper." Green Peter and his sister walked until they came to the town. When he reached the gate, The people called out to him, "Come in, Green Peter, come in, because there are already 99 heads on stakes and yours will be the 100th one." Even though Green Peter was afraid, he went in all the same. And he was told that the princess would marry the first man who could hide himself so well that she would never find him. So Green Peter went in and was ordered to hide himself 3 mornings running, because otherwise he would be beheaded. But if the princess failed to find him, she and half the kingdom would be his. Poor Peter wept and said to himself, "I've just managed to get away from my evil stepmother, and look what trouble I'm in again. Where could I possibly hide?" Suddenly the little fish appeared. "Why are you crying, Green Peter?" "Because the king said that unless I can hide from his daughter, he will have me beheaded." The fish opened its mouth and said, "Hide in here, Green Peter." So Green Peter slipped into the fish's mouth and it swam to the bottom of the deep sea, where it hid itself in the sand. The young princess stepped out into the corridor. She rubbed her eyes and said, "Come out, Green Peter, from the mouth of the fish, from the sand at the bottom of the sea." So Green Peter came out. He crawled sadly out of the mouth of the fish and went to the royal palace. The next morning he tried again. "Where, oh where shall I hide?" Suddenly the little bird flew down and said to him, "Why are you crying, Green Peter?" "Why indeed, if I don't manage to hide from the princess, I'll be beheaded." The little bird spread its wings and said, "Come on, hide beneath my wings," and it flew up behind the back of the sun. When the princess came out to the corridor, she rubbed her eyes and caught sight of him at once. "Green Peter, come out from behind the back of the sun, from beneath the bird's wings." The bird flew down to the ground and let Green Peter slip out from under its wings. Green Peter went sadly back, and next morning he again set out. But by now he was crying more than ever before. "Oh, oh, oh, what will become of me?" The rosebush came up to him and said, "Don't worry, I'm going to hide you." They went before the royal palace and stopped right in front of the corridor. The rosebush sat down and said, "Hide among my leaves and thorns," and it opened up so that it became more radiant than the sun itself. The princess came out. She rubbed her eyes, but she couldn't see Green Peter anywhere. "Rub your eyes again, my girl," said the king. "Or would you prefer to marry?" Again the princess rubbed her eyes. She looked and looked, but to no avail. She eventually grew tired of looking for the lad and called out to him, "Come out, Green Peter, come out from wherever you are. I can't see you anywhere." And so Green Peter came out at last. The young couple married right away. He got half the kingdom too, and the wedding feast lasted for 3 long days. I was there myself, and I had a fine time. I was even given a nice big bone to chew. Hungarian Folk Tales. One-eyed, two-eyed, three-eyed. Once upon a time there lived a woman who had 3 daughters. The eldest daughter had 3 eyes, the middle one had 1 eye, and the youngest had 2 eyes. One day the woman decided to marry off her daughters. A young man arrived seeking a bride, but he wanted to marry the youngest daughter with 2 eyes. But the woman wanted to marry off her eldest daughter first. The woman and the 2 elder girls became very angry with the youngest. They had a goat, and the youngest girl had to watch the goat in the fields every day. The youngest daughter was very sad because her sisters hated her and did not give her any food to eat. She was crying in the fields one day, and the goat asked her, "Why are you so sad, my dear?" "I am sad and cry because my sisters hate me so much and they give me no food to eat." "Don't be sad, I shall help you. Whenever you feel hungry, just tell me, 'Little goat, come here. Come here and lay me a table, dear.'" The youngest daughter did as the goat said, and from then on she left for the fields every morning in the best of moods. The sisters soon began to wonder why the youngest one no longer asked for food. And they decided to spy on her. On the first day, the one-eyed daughter went with her two-eyed sister to the fields to see what she did there all day. Both daughters sat down in the grass. "Lean your head in my lap," said the two-eyed daughter to her one-eyed sister. And as she lay down, her sister began to ask, "Are you awake or are you asleep, my sister?" And she kept on asking this until the one-eyed sister fell fast asleep. Then the two-eyed daughter said, "Little goat, come here and lay me a table, dear." By the time the one-eyed daughter woke again, the goat had cleared away all the food, including the table. When she returned home, the one-eyed daughter reported that she had seen nothing at all. The next day it was decided that the three-eyed daughter should accompany her two-eyed sister to the fields. So the two girls went out to the fields with the goat. The three-eyed girl leaned her head into her sister's lap, and the two-eyed daughter began to recite, "Are you awake or are you asleep, my three-eyed sister?" Then the three-eyed daughter closed two of her eyes, but her sister did not see that her third eye stayed open, and she began to say, "Little goat, come here and lay a table for me, dear." The three-eyed daughter pretended to be fast asleep, and when she awoke, she did not tell her sister what she had learned while sleeping. At home, she told everything to her mother and sister. The youngest daughter became very sad when the three women decided to kill her pet goat. That night, she dreamt that an old man told her to ask for the hooves and horns of the goat and plant them behind the door without letting anyone see. So that is what she did. By morning, a fine apple tree had grown on that very spot. and no one could pick an apple from its branches except the two-eyed daughter. When the young man came, he asked the one-eyed daughter and the three-eyed daughter to pick him a golden apple from the tree, but neither could do it because the branches always pulled away from their grasp. They made the two-eyed sister hide under the bed, and she was not allowed to come out whenever the young man visited the house. But one day she rolled a golden apple out from under the bed, and the young man asked, "How did this apple roll here? Who rolled it here? I demand to see who did this thing." The two sisters said, "She is a dirty little nothing and you should not waste your eyes on her." Then the young man looked under the bed and saw the two-eyed daughter he loved so very much. He took her by the hand and led her away, saying that she must be his wife and no other. Off they went, and the two sisters stayed at home. If they had not stayed at home, my story would have lasted longer still. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Fox Princess. Once upon a time there was an old king, and he had 3 sons. The king was so old that he could not leave his castle, and so he had a church built in the grounds where he could pray. On the day that the church was at last complete, a bird began to sing on top of its tower. When the king heard the bird's song, he suddenly became a young man once more, and he ordered his sons to catch the bird. The eldest son climbed to the top of the tower, but as soon as he reached out to catch the bird, it flew away. The prince watched the bird as it flew, and he saw it land in a nearby forest. "Father, I saw where the bird flew. I shall pursue it. Godspeed, my son, and return with the bird as soon as you can." The young prince arrived at the forest as the sun began to set. He made a fire and ate his supper. Then he saw a fox. "Go, dog, and catch that fox." The fox stood and commanded, "May you and your dog turn to stone." So that is what happened. The next morning, the middle son climbed to the tower to catch the bird. He saw the same thing that his brother had seen, and as he came down from the tower, he said, "I too shall follow the bird." He reached the forest by sunset and also sat and ate his supper, and as he ate, he saw the fox. "Go, dog, and catch that fox." The fox stood and commanded, "May you and your dog turn to stone." On the third morning, the bird sang again, and so the youngest prince climbed the tower, but the bird flew away once more. The youngest son saw the same forest that his brothers had seen. He also followed the bird's flight and arrived at the forest as the sun was setting. He also made a fire and sat and ate his supper. Then he saw the fox. "Fine fox, do not bark. Come and share my food instead." "I would join you with pleasure, but I am afraid of your dog." "Don't be afraid. I shall tie it to a tree." "Prince, do you think the bird is in this tree?" "That's what I think. I saw it fly right here." "But that is not so. The bird is very far away, and don't be sad because we shall catch it." "The bird is in the land of the Red King, and that is 7 lands away. There is a pear tree in the garden of the king, and in that tree there is a hollow, and in that hollow lives the bird." Then the fox turned into a fine young man, and the two of them set forth. After many days and nights, they arrived at the city where the Red King lived. And as they approached the royal garden, the fox said, "This is the pear tree, Prince. It won't be hard to catch the bird, but there is one difficulty. As you climb down the tree, try not to bite a pear because the tree will make such a noise that it will wake all the guards in the royal palace." As the prince climbed back down the tree, he took a breath and opened his mouth so wide that a pear popped between his teeth, and he bit on it by chance. The guards ran to the garden and caught the young prince. The Red King said, "I see you are a prince. I should have you executed, but I will spare your life on one condition." What would that be? "There is a beautiful palace on the shores of the Red Sea. In that palace lives a beautiful princess. If you bring her here, I will pardon you. I have one life, I have one death. I shall do my best." "Again you took a difficult task. I won't let you do it alone. I shall take the task myself because you were good to me, unlike your brothers." The prince and the fox journeyed on and soon reached the shores of the Red Sea. The fox tore off a gigantic leaf and shaped it into a boat with oars. Then they sat in the boat and crossed the sea. And as they reached the far side of the sea, the fox kicked the boat and it turned into a pair of golden shoes, and the fox turned into an old cobbler with a long white beard. The fox then walked to and fro in front of the beautiful palace with the golden shoes in his hands. The princess shouted down to him, "Poor cobbler, bring those golden shoes to me and I shall buy them." "I'm sorry, your highness, but I am very old and cannot climb stairs. Would you be so kind and come down to try them on?" So the princess ran down to try on the shoes. They fit her beautiful feet perfectly. Then the old man shouted, "Little shoes, take all three of us to where we want to be." And they found themselves back on the far side of the sea in a flash. Then he asked the princess, "Tell me, do you know the Red King, as we came here to take you there?" "Of course I know him. I shall never marry him. I would rather die." "What would you say to the prince, your majesty?" "I should like to marry him even though he had me kidnapped." "Worry not, princess. You shall marry him and I shall marry the Red King." When they arrived back in the Red King's city, the fox did a somersault and changed into a pretty princess, much like the other. When the Red King saw the princess, he was delighted. He gathered all his ministers and friends and began to prepare for a wedding feast. And as they were sitting around the table, one of the wedding guests said, "This princess is perfect, except for one fault." The other asked, "And what is that?" The gentleman replied, "Why, she has the eyes of a fox." What girl would not be ashamed when someone says she has the eyes of a fox? The bride hid under the table, did a somersault, and turned back into the fox and ran out of the room in the greatest of haste. By the time the guests came to their senses, the fox was far, far away. The three of them continued their journey home, and as they passed the forest, they saw the place where the prince had given supper to the fox. Here the fox jumped down and said, "Do you see these figures of stone? They are your brothers, and these are their horses. How did they come to be here?" "They set their dogs on me, and so I turned them to stone. Would you like me to turn them back again?" "Of course I would. Every man loves his brothers." "Very well, I will turn them back, but you may be sorry I did." The fox then walked over and patted the stone statues. "Rise up and live once more." Both of them stood up, and the fox said, "Well, dear prince, I shall travel no further with you." They bid farewell to each other, and the fox left. The four of them travelled home together, but they soon began to quarrel. Was it fair the youngest son should marry first? So the two princes decided to kill their youngest brother. The eldest prince cut off his head with his sword. The fox knew this would happen, and it ran to find the head a distance from the body. It ran hither and thither and saw a snake with leaves in its mouth. "Hey, snake, give those leaves to me." "I will not. It took me 7 long years to find them." The fox stamped on the snake's tail and it dropped the leaves on the ground. The fox picked the leaves up and ran to the prince. It rubbed the leaves on the prince's neck and put his head back in its proper place. The prince opened his eyes. Oh, what a deep sleep I had. You fell asleep for eternity, but I saved your life. I told you your brothers would kill you and rob you of your wife. Take better care in the future. Godspeed. And then the fox vanished. The boy arrived home to his father with a little bird in his shirt. He placed the bird on top of the clock. The bird began to sing a beautiful tune, and the old king sprang to his feet like a young man once more. Who brought this bird to me? It was me, father, said the youngest one. What should I do with your troublesome brothers? Your Majesty, dear father, give them money and horses and let them go on their way. I never want to see them here again. And the two princes were banished from the land. The youngest prince married his beautiful bride, and they both lived happily ever after.